Well, this is the bio video, and I wanted to add color, character to it. Most of the time when you come to stuff like this, it's just a type up, you know? I mean, to be completely honest, I don't think there's too many things more appropriate than Penthouse of a Haunted. That seems to work for me. That describes everything pretty well. I feel like I should cut right now. I was born in Fort Worth. My parents went bankrupt when I was 2. And I moved to a suburb in between Dallas and Fort Worth. And I grew up there, and when I was about 12, my second mom, and I hope that makes sense, what that means. It's pretty obvious. But she committed suicide, and my whole world fell apart. And a lot of things from my past made sense, and the future looked much more proper and real. And at that same time, I went over to my good friend's house, and he was playing a Tupac album. And at that junction in my life, that intersection, Tupac made all the sense in the world. It was angry, violent, and it seemed wrong, but it wasn't, because it was real, you know? And so I gravitated towards that, and I started to listen, and I started to see it for what it was, and I fell in love with hip-hop. And I pretty much listened to all the hip-hop I could until I was about 21. That's probably all I listened to was hip-hop until I was about 21. So I was at UNT, at college. That life didn't work out for me. It wasn't my cup of tea, per se. But I was there at the time, and it was the Kanye West 50 Cent battle. And I was super hyped, you know what I mean? Stuff like that was fun in hip-hop. Still like that stuff, which you'll see. And so after that, like, my whole world changed, especially musically. I couldn't relate to music anymore. Music was dead to me. And so at that point, I decided to make music, since I couldn't relate to music anymore. And in hopes that there were other people that couldn't relate to what they were hearing, and wanted something that really they felt. You know what I mean? I couldn't feel it anymore. It didn't make my bones vibrate. And so I started making music, and what I started with is poetry, lyrics, because that's mature, like, real hip-hop, you know what I mean? And that's refined hip-hop. And so I started with lyrics and poems, and I probably wrote 50 or 60 poems, some of which are on the site. And after that, that was about the time where I decided I wanted to make my first album. I wanted to turn the poetry to music, and poetry and music is quite a bit different. So I had to morph, you know, that poetry into a musical form. And so I started to do that, and the first album I made was Sensory Overload. And here's the thing, and the thing about me is, I'm 28, and if you're 25, 24, if you're 30, like, if you're 15 and you haven't seen yourself collapse, you know what I mean? See yourself turn into ashes. And some people it takes 60 years, little pricks, you know what I mean? Until they realize, holy man, I'm a burnt down house. But I learned that quick. I go big or go home. I come from Texas. Like, that's how I am molded, you know what I mean? So I've done some stupid shit in my day. But that woke me up to the dark. But once you realize there's a deep dark, you realize there's a beautiful light. You know what I mean? So I knew if I could go down that far, I could rise that high. But that album it's a metaphor to my life, you know, my 28 years or 25 years at that time of life. And I made the album, and I finished the album, and I got to the final step, and I gave the last of my money, which I had worked for all this money, like not making a pretty penny, And while I was doing that, I was making the album and putting everything together to bring the album to life. And I gave the final part, the final monetary part to the guy I was working with at the time. And he totally shot me in the back. Like, he just bullshitted me for like 2 months, never gave me my albums, really bullshitted me for like a year. And I had already told myself I wasn't jumping back into the trap, you know what I mean? I was already on Jacob's ladder. I wasn't trying to play in the ashes. And so I wasn't going back to that, and that's a whole nother story, you know what I mean? Like, don't get me started on things you don't understand, you know what I mean? If you turn the lights out, you can be looking at a Monet. And if you try to judge stuff without the lights on, you know what I mean? You might call a Monet a haunted house, and a haunted house a Monet. So when the lights come on, you see it for what it really is, you know what I mean? When you turn the fire on. And so, but that's a whole other story. We're moving on. Just don't get me started on stuff you don't understand. And so that fell apart. And there was a strange aura in my head. So I just released it digitally, but I didn't hardly tell anybody. I posted like 1 or 2 things on Facebook, and probably told a handful of people, because it wasn't done to me. The paintbrush, was not done painting. It was a half canvas, and half of it was just white. You know what I mean? And so it wasn't done in God's hands, and it wasn't done in my mind, and that paintbrush wasn't done touching, you know what I mean? And painting. So I didn't tell anybody. Why would you want to show somebody a work of art that wasn't really hardly close to done in the hands of divinity, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I moved on, and the hype had died all down, and it took me, 6 months to get a job at Stage and Shake, which is about like living in a house like this, the way they pay you. Anyway, so it all fell apart, and so I had to go back to the drawing board, you know what I mean? Or, in other words, keep painting. And so that's when I really hit my stride. It was with Poverty, Golden Wisdom, and Satan, and then Make Alive came alive. And that's when I started to hit my stride. And you can really hear the influence of AC Alone off of Sensory Overload. And I really became gilded when I hit Poverty, Golden Wisdom, and Satan, and Make Alive. And then the fights, Kendrick dropped that. So after Make Alive came the fights, which is close up, you know what I mean? That was like real life, and that's the most deep I've gotten into anything that's hip hop. And I mean, Kendrick dropped that Control verse, and I'm like, what do you do if you're in the rap game at that point? Especially if you're someone like me, you know what I mean? I understand different angles and stuff, but if you're me, like, bro, you killed me. Like, I'm barely breathing over here. Like, I'm a fucking ghost. Like, and so at that point, it's just like, all right, game on. Like, game on. And so that's what the fights is. And it's special, you know what I mean? Just like that Control verse is special. And, just like Illmatic was special. Chronic 2001, you know what I mean? Marshall Mathers, Don Illuminati, like those in the Don Illuminati, that album, people still don't really fully get that. It's just dark, more than dark and idle. And dark goes a long way, let me tell you. But yeah, that's me. I hope you enjoy the site. I hope you enjoy the music. If you really listen and really have fun with it, and when I mean fun, you know what I mean? Crazy to me is a good time at times, but you'll never meet somebody crazier than me. You know what I mean? And that word paints a lot of angles. And if you want to sit in a cave and listen to the rain pour and the lightning strike, you know what I mean? And the bear walk by, like, if that's something to you, you'll feel it. That's a promise. But yeah, that's me. Listen and enjoy in the right sense. So Kanye, if you're listening, sign me. I will not let a dream down. This mind is a dream. So yeah, you know, that's it. Enjoy the music and listen. I guess all I have to say after all that is I do like the sun more than